The first video we ever posted on this channel was about our top 5 paddles for spin, but a lot has changed since then, so it's probably time to have a second look. Hey everybody, it's Luca from Rackets and Runners. Okay, to be honest, by the time we had posted that spin video, things had kind of already changed and we were just a little bit late to the party, and the YouTube comments let us know. The list may have been kind of dated, but the paddles we mentioned there were still pretty good for a spin, and if anything, it made me realize that controversy is good publicity. So why not dip our toe into controversy again? It was also thanks to a lot of those comments that we brought in so many of the paddles that we have on our wall now, and you'll see a lot of them on this list. But as usual, before we go on, remember that any of the paddles we mentioned here you can check out on our website, racketsandrunners.ca. And please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comment section what you want me to cover next. Now, yes, as it was a few months ago, this list is going to be controversial, so I absolutely have to lay down some criteria. One, and I need to emphasize this with every fiber of my being, but we need to carry these paddles at the store. This is a list of the paddles we carry, make of it what you will, but I can't talk about a paddle we don't carry because I haven't played with it. Criteria 2, this isn't a ranking of total RPMs a paddle can produce. I don't have a way of measuring that, and there are already a ton of videos on that already, so you can go watch those for that. But this is going to be a ranking of an overall spin performance from each of these paddles. Obviously, the amount of spin it can produce is very important for that, but there are also some other intangibles that make up a paddle's spin profile. The ease of access to spin, the variety of spin shots, the consistency at which you can access spin, those are all important as well, so we'll take them into account. Finally, the last little criteria is that I'll be talking about a whole paddle line, not just one individual thickness. 14s are usually more spin friendly than 16s, and we kind of know that, so just to be more inclusive to lines that might not have a thinner variant, we're not going to make this exclusively thin paddles. That's it with the criteria. We're going to get right into number 5 now. Hopefully I don't get too crucified, but if you do disagree with anything I have to say, let me know in the comments. Coming in at number 5, we have the Carbon 1X Power. Now, I am holding the 3X here, which is also very spin friendly, just the 1X is more, but before we get into why, we have to talk about thermoforming. One of the main reasons why our previous video on spin is a little dated now is because of the introduction of thermoforming into the world of pickleball. Thermoformed unibody paddles are made from one continuous piece of carbon fiber, unlike traditionally molded paddles that are kind of made from a bunch of different pieces kind of molded together. So basically there are no cutoffs in the carbon on thermoformed paddles, which means that when the ball makes contact with the paddle face, no energy is lost in seams because there are no seams, so the feel on contact is extremely rigid. The rigidity helps with power, no question, but the arguably more impressive characteristic is that it has a super positive effect on spin. That rigidity means there is a more one-to-one transfer of the energy you put into the paddle when swinging, which means there is less of a cap on the amount of spin you can produce. TLDR, thermoforming has basically revolutionized spin in pickleball, and the Carbon Powers are top performers in this category. But let's get back to why the 1X is more spin friendly than the 3X. Spin comes from a variety of things. Obviously, top sheet grid is one of them, and the Toray T700 carbon top sheet on all 3 of the Carbon Powers is fantastic, but it doesn't stop there. Spin also comes from a combination of swing weight and paddle head speed. Now, the 3X has more paddle face to crush the ball, but because that paddle face does come down so much lower, you can't swing the paddle nearly as fast. You can get so much more paddle head speed with the 1X, so you can whip it through contact quicker with that windshield wiper motion, which will give you more spin, so it's the most spin-friendly Carbon Power. Coming in at number 4, we have the bread and butter filth. Now, a lot of you probably know that this paddle and the Carbon 1X Power are the exact same shape, so what makes this one more spin friendly? Honestly, the difference is very marginal, but every time I play with the two, I start thinking more and more that the filth has a little bit more spin because there's something going on in the tech of the Carbon 1X Power's core that mutes it a tiny bit. That makes it noticeably better for control, but also takes away from a tiny bit of that rigidity, which negatively affects its spin. It's not a big difference, but it just feels like the filth is a bit more raw and therefore more spin friendly. Now, I actually did say in my review about the filth that the 1X Power is more spin friendly, but I'm correcting myself now. I think it's because the Carbon Power was the first thermoform paddle that I tested, and I was so shocked by the amount of spin I was getting. It kind of stayed this mythical spin king in my head, but now that I'm testing them back to back, I do think the filth just edges it. So yeah, all the good things I said about the 1X Power, just a little bit more spin friendly because of the core and top sheet. Coming in at number 3, we have the Vtic Pro V7. Now, for you more eagle-eyed viewers out there, you'll probably notice that this has a slightly more extended paddle face than either the Carbon ones or the filth, and you're probably thinking, Luca, didn't you just say that makes it less spin friendly? Yes, to a certain extent you're right, but this paddle's face doesn't come down as low as the one on the 3X, and the V7's other properties override whatever slightly slower speed you get from it. For one, the Vtic Pro top sheet is the most spin friendly for me. All the raw carbon top sheets are great, but every time I play with a Vtic Pro paddle, I just feel a bit more purchase on the ball. It has a very poppy feel like the Filth, but it just feels like it grabs onto the ball for a split second longer, which shoots it out with a bit more spin. If you want to hit a really hard spinny passing shot, you absolutely can, but if you want to slow it down a bit and hit a more low dipping third shot drop, it's better for that than the Filth. Basically, the way I would describe spin on the V7 is that you just have a little bit more control over the type of spin you can put on the ball. I also find that the slightly longer paddle face makes it a bit more consistent. The sweet spot is noticeably bigger than the one on the Filth and a bit bigger than the one on the Carbon 1X Power, so consistently accessing spin is easier. Consistency is always a little bit tough to quantify because it is kind of a personal preference type thing, but after months of playing with all these paddles, I keep arriving to the same conclusion, so I'm pretty much convinced at this point. Okay, so the next two paddles I'm very excited to talk about, and I don't want to ruin number one yet, but when you hear what I have to say about this one, you'll probably figure it out. Coming in at number 2, we have the 6-0 Double Black Diamond. Now, right off the bat, the Double Black Diamond is not fully extended, so in terms of top end spin, they will scientifically produce less purely because of leverage, and I understand that. But here's why I just don't care. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Pickleball isn't played in a lab. You'll very rarely be able to set up a perfect topspin shot other than, of course, on serve, but that's kind of a different story. What makes this hybrid shape so special is that it's top notch for spin on any type of shot. The 3 paddles we already mentioned are absolutely fantastic for spin, don't get me wrong, but they excel at spin generation on properly set up ground strokes. The Double Black Diamond is significantly more maneuverable, so you can flick the paddle through contact more easily. That means that on more randomized sticky situations, you can still access tons of spin. For example, if you have to react quickly at the net, you can move the paddle face into position very quickly and still hit a whippy roll volley. If you're scrambling to get a ball and don't have time to perfectly set up a shot, it's easy to just pop that face through contact and still hit a dipping passing shot. Basically, the Double Black Diamond perfectly summarizes why I put that piece of criteria about easy spin and variety of spin shots. This paddle is the king of spin variety. Actually, no, it's not. That's the next one. But first, let's talk about some notable omissions. Legacy. We still don't carry them. I've heard they are plenty spin friendly and I believe it, but I can't talk about it because I've never tried it. Now, the fact that the Vanguard Power Air Invicta was number 1 on our list back in March and now isn't even on this list kind of shows you the power of thermoforming. No pun intended. I really didn't want this list to be just a bunch of thermoform paddles, but I took it out and it just doesn't have the same amount of spin. It's as simple as that. Okay, I promise I read your comments about the Volair Forza Mach 1, but they are not here yet, although I think we did just place an order, so as soon as they're here, I'll get a review out. And yes, I've heard they're plenty spin friendly. Finally, I did just want to mention the Perseus. Now, it was probably the biggest release of the summer, and it is thermoform, but spin is lacking. I'm not sure why, but it's not as high as all of these. You probably guessed this when you heard me talking about the Double Black Diamond and how excited I am about the shape. So coming in at number 1, we have the Vtic Pro Flash. So the Flash and the DVD are basically identical in shape, so all the good things I just said about this, you can pretty much apply to this. Take that and add to it all the good things I said about the V7's top sheet, and you basically have the Flash, a perfect storm of everything that makes up spinny goodness. Now, it is really close between the Double Black Diamond and the Flash, but I did find I could consistently access a tiny bit more spin with the Flash, and again, that kind of comes down to this really good top sheet and core combo. Now, here's the thing. You might be watching this footage thinking, Luca, you don't look like you're playing as well with this paddle, and you're right. I don't actually like playing with the Flash or the Double Black Diamond as much as I do something extended. I do think that in terms of consistency, this shorter shape isn't quite as solid as something extended, but the benefits you get in variety outweigh the loss in consistency, at least in my opinion, so they're not perfect, but they are pretty darn close. So there you have it, our remastered top 5 pickleball paddles for spin. Knowing my luck, this list is probably going to be obsolete in a couple months. Actually, probably by the time I post it. But anyways, that is going to be the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Remember that if you do want to demo any of the paddles we talked about here, you can come visit us in store, or you can check them out online at racketsandrunners.ca.